Hello, and welcome back to the Conservative Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Ventura. I have an exciting guest with me today, Ed Rivet, who is the Executive Director of the Michigan Conservative Energy Forum, which was the first CEN state chapter that ever launched. A little bit more about Ed Rivet before we get started. Ed has over 35 years experience in Michigan policymaking, including 30 years as the chief pro-life lobbyist and strategist. He has written dozens of sections of Michigan law on the books today. He holds a bachelor and master's degree in public administration from Michigan State University. He's been involved in political campaigns for over 4 decades, managed record-setting statewide petition drives, and has extensive media experience, including appearances on Good Morning America and CNN, and hosting a daily current events local radio program. Ed walks the walk when it comes to advanced energy. He has geothermal systems and solar panels at his home and drives a hybrid electric vehicle. A lifelong Michigander, his views on stewarding our natural resources have been shaped by life experiences as an Eagle Scout and Scoutmaster, as well as being a hunter and canoeing and fly fishing the Ausable River his entire life. Thank you for being here with me today, Ed.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And yes, Ausable just flows off the
Ausable, yep.
Ausable, if you've been a Michigan resident long enough. We have a lot of challenging names in the state of Michigan tied to our Native American history. So
yes, thank you for that, Grace. Definitely some tongue twisters there, but also some beautiful things every time I get to go up to Michigan. I see the prettiest sights.
Amen.
Ed, you're coming off another successful year of an event that MICEF hosts at the state capitol, which is the electric vehicle ride and drive. Tell us about this event and what makes it so impactful to get legislators in trying and seeing this technology.
Yeah, well, that was the focus of the event. This was our second year of holding this event. We co-hosted with another organization called Clean Fuels Michigan. And it was a combination of both bringing the actual electric vehicles to the Capitol, parked right along the sidewalk outside the Capitol building. Senators literally have to walk past them to get from the Senate office building to the state Capitol. Along with the vehicles, though, we have charging station technologies, folks that are involved in mobile charging or off-grid charging. We had a battery manufacturer, one of the state's larger battery manufacturing companies, and other folks involved in the support of the entire EV transition. So we had a big tent set up on the Capitol lawn. We had an electric school bus there. And of course, the legislators and staff got to come out, and even members of the public were able to ride everything from the Ford F-150 Lightning pickup truck and Mach-E Mustang. Rivian pickup truck was there, several Teslas, Chevrolet Bolt. So they really got to see the whole breadth of the EV transformation, which is critically important here in Michigan because we are, the auto capital of the country, of the world. And the transition is dramatically affecting so many aspects of Michigan's economy because it is so directly tied to the auto industry. So as legislators are getting used to the idea that we're going to make cars in a new way after 100+ years here in Michigan of being the center of auto manufacturing and design, it's important for them to see it hands-on. And because there are a lot of state funding initiatives and so forth, it's important for them to see what that transition is looking like. And more importantly, if they've never ridden an electric car, they're just the best. They're so fast, they're so quiet, the technology is overwhelming. And believe it or not, there's still many legislators who have yet to drive in an electric vehicle. So it's just time. So it was a terrific event, well attended. And for a spring day in early May in Michigan, we were graced with fantastic weather. I got a little sunburn on that bald head of mine. So it was a great day. Very, very successful.
That is wonderful to hear. And I could see by the pictures that you did have some fantastic weather and how important it is to park those vehicles right outside the State House. Like you said, they couldn't avoid them. They were coming in or out anyways. Once you get these technologies into legislatures' hands and let them see that it's real. These aren't 10 years in the future. You talked about 6 different types of electric vehicles that you had there, including an EV bus. The market is here, so it's great to see you guys bringing that to your state house, and very important. Excited to see this event continue to grow in the next few years.
Well, unfortunately, I think there's going to come a day when the EV showcase may not be so important because it'll be so commonplace. It'd be like, why would we have a gas-powered showcase right at Michigan, at the Michigan Cap? Like, what? That's been our reality for 100 years. Well, I think in 5 years, everybody's going to become so accustomed to the reality of EVs that the novelty of bringing it to the Capitol may shorten the shelf life of our EV event. But there's so much more. I'm already starting to think about solar panel day at the Capitol. So let's we won't limit our creativity in educating legislators about clean energy technology.
I love that. We'll maybe not do some ride and drives, but we'll continue to grow and show energy innovation at the State House. That's very important. And another really impactful piece of programming that MICEF has is the fellowship programs, the Pischea Fellowship, which awards its fellows the opportunity to learn more about Michigan's energy landscape and conservative energy policies. Fellows also receive a $1,000 stipend for their time. And I will mention that the fellowship applications are right now open. So Ed, can you speak to the history of that program and how you utilize your fellows?
Sure. Well, first of all, we're very proud of the Pischea Fellowship program. It was named after our founder, Mark Pischea, in memorial to him, and we still greatly miss Mark. So it was a great opportunity to honor him by naming the fellowship program, which is now in about its 7th, I think we're in our 7th or 8th class of fellows. It is primarily college students in their usually junior, senior year. We've had young professionals, however, who are recently graduated and starting to work in their professions. A couple of years ago, we were thrilled to have a fellow who was a PhD candidate remotely during COVID from Cambridge University in England, was one of our fellows who produced a peer-reviewed journal study about the auto industry using machine learning technology. So these can be some fairly high-level, sophisticated projects that our fellows work on. They've been very diverse, from white papers to video production to podcasts like this related to battery technology, or one that's our current fellow is finishing his project on transmission. And he's doing some podcasts and videos like this. So the projects are very diverse. They cover all kinds of subjects: nuclear, hydro, electricity generation. And for several of these students, it has kind of prompted them to go in this direction for their careers, to pursue energy as a career option. And for others, their work has been helpful to us in the advocacy work that we do or the education work that we do. So there are just multiple benefits. And a few of our fellows have ended up staying with us. My current associate on the MICEF staff, our program and operations director, Emily, it was in our first class of fellows. So it's also grooming conservative energy leadership through our fellowship program. And we certainly will encourage our fellow state chapters to consider the program because it has these long-term benefits. So we're very, very proud of the Pischea Fellowship.
That's wonderful. And what a fun story to see Emily come. You said she was, I do remember she was in the first class. So that would have been 7 or so years ago. To now grow and become a leader on the MICEF team for the last couple of years is just incredible to watch.
Yep.
And can you tell us when applications for that program will close?
Right. We'll be opening those very shortly. We're just wrapping up the current fellowship class, and they can go to our website, micef.org, MICEF.org, and they'll find it right kind of almost front and center under our programs. You'll see the Pischea Fellowship. Click, they can apply right online, all the things that they'll need to do to apply, and the details about their program. We typically launch in the fall their work. We've had some challenges over the past few years because of COVID, but we're kind of getting back on the right track. So we will take applicants now in the late spring and through the summer and hopefully get them working in the fall. Again, because most of our fellows are active students and they're upper class level students or sometimes graduate level students. So, but they certainly can check it out. And if they would like to put in an application, we're always happy to review applicants as soon as we can.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that information. And I'll be sure to share that link in our description of this episode. And this is also a great time for us to take a break. So thanks, stick with us, and I will be back with MICEF Executive Director, Ed Rivet. Thanks for sticking with us. I'm back with MICEF Executive Director, Ed Rivet, and we're going to move into some policy discussion. So Ed, can you tell us about what policy issues MICEF are moving on this summer, and then speak to your MICEF Land and Liberty chapter and what they'll be up to in the state this year?
Yeah, well, there's a real intersection between a lot of the policy work that we're doing right now and the work that our Land and Liberty Coalition program does, which is the siting of large-scale wind and solar in Michigan. So because we're a local control kind of state, and we have many jurisdictions, we have 1,240 townships in Michigan, and much of the zoning decisions on where to put wind and solar projects is at that local township level. So that's what our Land and Liberty program does, working with those communities to set the ordinances, to work through the permitting processes, to help the communities understand it, and hopefully embrace these valuable programs that will be a real benefit to them. I mean, they're going to see a big boon in revenue, tax revenue, as well as the economic development that comes with it. But we have some policy challenges at the state level, and because that zoning is very diverse, we're also seeing the opposition, the NIMBY, not in my backyard kind of movements that are working to kill a lot of these projects. And it's because we have kind of some loopholes in the law. There's no enforcement of various mechanisms that really prevent local governments from kind of arbitrarily or capriciously banning projects that the state law really didn't envision giving them that sort of authority. So we're working on some policy efforts to change the law to put a proper balance so these projects can be cited effectively. Another challenge we have is with the taxation of these projects, especially solar projects, because they're newer, they're more in vogue these days. So we have challenges because assessments to property tax or equipment assessments for local tax purposes can vary from one area to another, or literally a project that straddles two township boundaries, and the project can be in more than one jurisdiction, and you might not have a compatible tax assessment between the two. So that's another policy where we're looking for some uniformity. We're looking for simplicity so that it's the same everywhere across the state. So we just recently had the opportunity to testify in support of legislation like that at the state capitol. I actually helped to draft some of the language in the bill. So those are some areas where what we do in the field, where we're trying to help work alongside of developers and work alongside the local officials in the field. We're also working on the policy level things at the state capitol. In addition to trying to promote community solar projects, which are not authorized under state law right now. Limitations on rooftop solar is another challenge we're dealing with. And as we've been talking about with EVs and that transition, some of the programs that have to do with building out our charging infrastructure and things related to the EV space and the workforce development related to those. So there's a pretty broad spectrum of things that policy-wise are happening, budget expenditures. Of course, we have all the federal dollars, the IIJA and the IRA, where are those funds going? Can we get some of these funds for energy efficiency spent well to help homes and businesses become more energy efficient? So we're kind of playing in that space in the budget process. So it's pretty broad, a lot of subjects, and getting to be a little tiring these days. And so likewise, with our Land and Liberty program, right, we have over a dozen industry partners and utility. We have a team basically between myself, I mentioned Emily on our MICEF team, a full-time state director, 2 more part-time contracted folks that are all part of our Land and Liberty team. So we work every single day across these many jurisdictions, townships with, like I say, over a dozen different developers trying to help facilitate the siting of their projects. So we become recognized really now in the state as the experts on what does it take to get a solar project in the ground or a wind turbine project in the ground, and how do we fairly but justly counteract some of these opposition groups who will stop at nothing. They believe in a scorched earth policy, and if they just will fight a renewable energy program by hook or by crook. And our job is to try and do it by the book and educate and inform folks so that successful projects can be put in place.
It's wonderful to hear that, and to hear that the Land and Liberty chapter and your MICEF chapter is becoming the expertise, the go-to place in the state to get these projects cited. Earlier, you talked about the different township masters that you guys are under, these 1,200, oh, both big numbers, 1,200 different townships that can have different rulings, and this is confusing and deep stuff. So it's good to hear that your team is ready to combat that, to go out. And I know that your Brendan and your other Land and Liberty leaders are out speaking publicly. They're at township meetings, they're making those connections and really having a lasting impact on the state. Can you speak to any projects that you've gotten steel in the ground?
Well, we're seeing some of them. It's encouraging. There are some that are being built right now. There's a large project outside of Battle Creek, Michigan, that we worked on for a couple of years. That's affectionately known as the Cereal City solar project. One of the interesting areas that I've been working on as well is making state lands available for development on marginal lands or lands otherwise controlled by the state. So we're working diligently on a project on the western end of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, which is mining territory. There's an abandoned surface iron mine that's been sitting for decades with nothing happening. It reverted to the state's control for tax purposes. And so it's essentially a mining brownfield. And we worked first to create the process whereby the state would put out an RFP and get a bid and get a developer to design a solar project on that land. And then after that process was completed, the developer that won the contract signed up with us through Land and Liberty. So we kind of set up the front end, and then they won the contract, and then they realized they could use our help in getting the community to embrace it, as well as working with the state government for the first time in siting a project on state land. So we're taking a brownfield that is almost, I wouldn't say entirely a liability to the state, but it's certainly not a real asset because it's an old industrial site. Now we're going to turn it into productive land. We're going to turn it into productive use. It's going to generate some revenue to the state, the Natural Resources Department that oversees the land. And it's going to produce low-cost electricity in the highest electricity cost region in the country, in the 48. In the lower 48, the Western UP pays some of the highest electricity rates. Well, they do in the entire lower 48. It's higher in Alaska and Hawaii because of their distance issues, but So we're bringing them cheaper energy on state lands, developing a brownfield, and even bringing in a little extra revenue to the state. So those are kind of the innovative types of things we're doing to put steel in the ground, as we like to say, and actually bring clean energy and clean energy benefits, economic and otherwise, to those local communities in the state of Michigan overall.
Those are incredible stories. Great to hear that you are getting steel in the ground, and it takes years to get steel in the ground. These are projects that, you know, our land and liberty leaders last a while with. So it's good to hear you getting them to the finish line, or at least starting to see technology get launched there. And then Ed, I want to talk personally about your transition to being an advanced energy leader. And you have some clean energy systems in your home. You drive a hybrid vehicle. Can you talk about your transition, talk about your clean energy systems, and why you made those switches?
Well, one has to, admit that one is an energy geek. And I don't know how many of our colleagues in the clean energy, conservative energy advocacy space are quite as geeky as I am. I'll tell you my sort of fascination with energy goes all the way back to when I was maybe in my early teens. And my parents had built a home. And my dad wanted to finish the basement, right? The old finished basement, we never called him a man cave back then, but we were going to finish the basement. And it was a great usable space for the family, large family. And I remember after it was done, I used to hang out in the basement playing my guitar and this, that, and it was always the coolest in the summer because we didn't have air conditioning back then in the 70s, early 70s. It was always the coolest in the house in the summer, and it was the warmest in the winter, I think, and it was obvious because the ground insulates around us. So like, why don't we build our houses in the ground? And I said to my siblings, one day I'm going to build my house in the ground because it'll be more energy efficient. And they looked at me like, you are just a weirdo, right? That's just dumb. So I ultimately did build a house about 20 years ago. I didn't build it into the ground. I built the ground into my house by putting in a geothermal system. So I have the tubes buried in the ground. They pull the heat energy from the ground all year long, same temperature, and then through the heat pump technology can heat my home in the winter and cool my home in the summer. So instead of building my house into the ground, I built the ground into my house. And thereafter, because when we built the house, my wife wanted one of those nice new glass top electric stoves. Now that's 20-year-old technology, but that was the thing. So we had an electric stove, we had electric dryer, right? So my whole house was already electric when we finished it. I live out on 10 acres of land. So I didn't need a propane tank, where all of my neighbors have what we call a pig in Michigan. I don't know what you call them elsewhere, but that big propane tank outside of rural homes is called a pig. No pig at my house. And my neighbors would go, "Where's your pig?" And I'd say, "I have a geothermal system buried in the ground. That's how I heat my house." And I have a wood stove because we have some wood on our property. So I also use what I consider biomass to heat my home, which is a renewable resource. And so 5-6 years ago, we looked into solar about 6 years ago because my house was 100% electric and the cost of solar kept coming down. So now I have the solar panels at my home. And then a few years after that, I bought the electric vehicle, just a hybrid Chevy Volt, kind of the grandpa of electric vehicles now, not very, hip and happening, but and the bad part of it is I had 3 children still living at home, all able to drive, and they all drove my Volt. And when each of them needed to either buy their first car or replace the car they had, they also bought Chevy Volts. So at one point, I had 4 of them parked at my house, and my electric bill went crazy because Dad became, the gas station. Like, well, we don't go to the gas station. We just plug in Dad's house.
Go have dinner, go plug in the car.
Yeah, right. So it just, and even my wife, who was a little slow to the EV thing, why are we getting this electric car? Once she drove it and realized that on a sunny day, if we were home, the sun on our solar panels was charging the car instead of going to the gas station. even my wife decided that an energy geek isn't such a bad guy to live with, right? And so to show you how bad, and I'm not sure how well this will work in our podcast, but here's my phone.
Oh, yeah.
This is my app, which is showing you that currently I'm making about 5,600 watts. I know it's not in focus enough, but basically this is my phone app that tells me how much electricity my solar panels are currently making at my house. And so I can track, at any time daily how much electricity I'm making. And that shows you what an energy geek that I am.
Well, what a perfect tool for an energy geek. You have all of your data.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's really useful when I go speak to legislators, especially more conservative legislators who are skeptical about solar. And it might actually be an overcast day. And I'll say, look out the window right now, because I live south of the Capitol about 10 miles. And I can say, I can tell you that it's cloudy like this at my house right now, as it is here in downtown Lansing. And I'll pull out my app and show them that I'm still making 2,500 watts of electricity on an overcast day. And that way they can understand that, yeah, even though it's more cloudy here in Michigan, way more cloudy here in Michigan than many other places, that I can demonstrate that the technology works. Now, 2,500 watts is not a lot of electricity on a cloudy day compared to a sunny day where I'm making 9,000 watts, right? I can make almost four times more energy on a great sunny day. But to even be able to demonstrate with something as simple as an app on your phone that solar works, now if it's a really cloudy, heavy cloudy, rainy day, you don't make anything, right? Or on a snowy day when your solar panels get covered, you don't make anything. Which is another way I can explain to them that we still need other sources of energy, like nuclear. We just formed a pro-nuclear caucus in the Michigan legislature, bipartisan, bicameral, in our House and Senate, Republicans, Democrats, coming together to study the new nuclear technologies that are coming, small modular reactors, molten salt reactors. Can we bring those to Michigan? Do we need to support the grid of the future that's going to charge our vehicles and electrify our homes? So I can demonstrate solar does work. It's great. I use it. It has limitations, which is why we, as then all of the above conservative energy advocate, are also right there at the Capitol advancing, study into nuclear alongside of good policy on taxing solar panels. We're gonna give you the whole spectrum, and we're gonna promote an EV at the same time that we're gonna, talk about what the grid needs to be able to support it. So, it's making me tired just thinking about all this stuff. We work too hard here in Michigan.
It's an exciting time, and it must be a very exciting time as a self-proclaimed energy geek to just get to be right on the forefront of all these awesome changes.
Yeah, well, and again, for many, they don't understand what does it mean to be a conservative advocating in the energy realm. And one of the other things that this conversation you and I have had, and I can have this conversation about all of those different subjects for hours and hours, and we've not mentioned the climate word or the climate debate. Not that it's not relevant, not that it's not real in many people's minds and in the whole conversation about conversion to clean energy. It is, but the more important point is it doesn't have to cause division in the discussion about energy. It doesn't have to divide the room and you're on this side and you're on that. In fact, we know that the less we talk about climate, especially as we go into rural conservative areas and try and promote solar and so forth, the less we talk about climate and the more we talk about everything you and I have been discussing during this conversation shows you it doesn't need to be about climate. It doesn't need to be partisan. It doesn't need to be ideological when it becomes advocacy around the technology, around free market and innovation, all of the principles that our conservative energy network stands for, and we as MICEF stand for. It just shows that there's a tremendous amount of space for us as conservatives to be advocates, and important for us to be those advocates, not only to speak to conservative folks and conservative-minded legislators, but in many cases, I've started to see the influence I'm having among folks maybe a little further to the ideological left, the environmental activists. They're saying, I see how that's more effective rhetoric that really helps us make the conversation more universal. So I think to a degree, the more we be who we are, we're being effective in actually helping shape the conversation that folks that maybe do want to beat the climate change drum realize that let's add a little bit of conservative flavor to that messaging, and it actually moves the needle more effectively. So we would like to think that we're helping shape that conversation as the conservative voice for clean and advanced energy in Michigan.
And I think you're right that we really are, when I, as from the national team perspective, when I talk to people that are more left leaning, the deeper we get in conversation, the more we realize that we are in line with a lot of the solutions we're looking for. And you're absolutely right with the type of language that we're using to try not to push anyone out of the conversation. That's why I love approaching clean energy from that conservative lens, because it is a more encompassing way to have a conversation. We want to bring everyone in. Something that you touched upon a little bit, but I do just want to ask, it's my favorite question. Ed, what are your hopes for our clean energy future?
Well, I think along the lines of, what I was just wrapping up with, just the all of the above creates an opportunity for us to not only give us an advanced clean energy economy, but and all of the things that we talk about as conservatives, that our grid is more resilient, that we all have more energy security, that perhaps, our energy can be less politicized, right? We continue to still have energy battles over pipelines, how much, we're drilling for oil or gas and where we are, or the geopolitical implications. Putin invades Ukraine, and all of a sudden the natural gas market and the oil market get all screwed up and things go off kilter. So to the extent that as we make energy accessible, affordable, more reliable and resilient, we take away political conflict. We might take away geopolitical conflict. We empower people of, lesser income. And we haven't talked at all about energy efficiency, and we're big on energy efficiency. I have 2 members of my advisory board, our leadership council. I have 2 members whose full-time companies do nothing but energy efficiency related work. So we know that if we can help people improve the envelope of their home, the insulation, the ceiling, and use more energy efficient technologies, that means that they're more secure, they're more energy secure. Maybe they can also invest in solar at their home. Those things change economically what's happening at the individual level, right? That's individuals can embrace these changes in ways that are advantageous to them. We talk about it from the environmental justice or equity perspective in many conversations. And the idea that we're reducing people's energy burden, the percentage of money they spend of their budget on energy. These are really important conversations when we're in these broader groups and we're talking about environmental justice, or we're talking about climate change and everything. But it's the same advocacy for us, that what is the way we can innovate? What are the ways people can be more energy independent and have a more resilient systems? Those are the kind of vision things that I have. Those are my kind of hopes, because energy is so fundamental, right? And we talk about, just what happens when power goes out from a storm for more than like a day or 2. We start to see the ripple effect dramatically, or these dramatic spikes in oil prices and gasoline. When gas went up to $7 a gallon in California, everything was immediately affected by those sorts of things. So a hope for a clean energy future is that stable, resilient, predictable, affordable kind of system. And as we diversify it with all these different types of technologies, it means energy becomes the critically important thing that's not something to worry about, right?
Yep.
we don't have to worry about it, or have it kind of the tail wagging the dog. That's a vision for me.
And a great vision it is. So much for your time today, Ed. Can you tell our audience members where they can connect with MICEF?
Sure. Well, easiest way is through our website, like anywhere else, at micef.org. Shoot us an email through our info, contact us. I think we have our office phone number somewhere on the website to contact us. You can feel free to give us a ring. It pretty much goes right to my phone anyway. So you can reach me. We're happy to answer questions about any of these things, right? What does it mean to put on a ride and drive event? Tell us more about your fellowship program, et cetera. Happy to connect with and share our experiences with anybody who's interested. And if you even want to learn about solar and how to have one of those nice geeky apps on your phone after you put a solar array at your house, I'm happy to talk to you about that as well.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. And when I look to go solar, I will definitely be giving you a call.
There you go.
Thank you all for joining us today. Our podcast is available on Spotify, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. You can learn more about CEN by visiting www.conservativeenergynetwork.org. You can find us on Twitter @ConsEnergyNet, on Facebook @Conservative Energy Network, and LinkedIn @Conservative Energy Network. As always, I'm your host, Kayla Ventura, and I hope you have a great day.